How you doing?
All right.
All right. What's your name?
Thomas Cox. They call me Hashim in the state penitentiary.
Okay, Mr. Cox. I hear you're a very influential person here in the Richmond area. You work with kids. Um, do a lot of motivational speaking, high-profile motivational, high-sought, recruited motivational speaker. Do a lot of community activist work. Uh, and do a lot of as far as marches, protests. Um, what I want to do is take me back to the year of 1969 and just explain to our audience exactly how you came to where we are today in 2009.
Okay, well, basically, I would have to, the backdrop that I would have to give you is I was sort of like a mother's boy. I was like very calm, non-violent. I like to raise pigeons, watch insects, and something happened with my mother because it was only me, my mother, my father, and my little sister Jean. My little sister Jean died when I was around about 8, and she had a kidney disease when, if it was today, she would have lived. But after my mother died, I turned to something else that I really don't fully understand today. And I got involved in crime, and I went to rob a store, and I got shot in my abdomen twice. I almost died. I was tried for it and was sentenced to 16 years and went to the state penitentiary. At the time, the wall was like a terrible place for the being, but they wouldn't send people like myself in the wall with the time that I had. I went to the road camp. I escaped off the road camp on Camp 29, way up there in Vincent, Virginia. And I stayed out there in the mountains something like 3 days. I like to die out there because I didn't know what I was doing. And when they caught me, I went to the hole. And this one I realized that the state penitentiary was just like a plantation. Because at that time, the hole was bread and water diet. They would give you bread 3 times a day, slices of bread, and they would give you cups of water. The cell was cold, and you had a little small, little thin thing for a mattress. On the 3rd day, they would give you 1 meal, and your stomach had shrunk, and so the torture continues because you would eat and then you would throw up and you were scared because you didn't exactly know what was happening to you. This is how diabolical I feel that these people's mind was at the time. But eventually, I continued to be a prisoner that just didn't accept injustice and always tried to fight back. So they sent me to the wall. And they sent me to the wall in 71. And when I went to the wall, I found out about the people that they call the booty bandits that was coming at you in a physical way to have sex with you if you was younger, didn't have any hair on your face, or whatever. And I encountered, while I was there, several incidents like this. I don't want to go into any details about the first major charge that I received, but I received a murder charge of an individual that was stabbed 23 times. And it was me and another person named Larry Davis was charged with this murder. I was sent to the segregation unit, and in the process of waiting to be tried on this murder charge, I got into another beef back in segregation, and I received another murder charge. And this person was from Portsmouth, Virginia, and he was stabbed in the heart. I was transferred from segregation from the penitentiary to the state farm, which was called M Building. In M Building, I waited, and I was eventually exonerated of these charges. From that point on, I became like a terror in the Virginia prison system. Mind you that I was becoming political, but at the time I was just dealing with anger and frustration from my mother's death, anger and frustration from things that was happening when I thought about Martin Luther King's death, and I thought about what Huey Newton was trying to do, and I found out about George Jackson that was in San Quentin, that was turning into a revolutionary when he was in there for just stealing $18 and had got 1 year to life. And he had became such a brilliant writer, and he had influenced me and so many of us to stop thinking as a criminal and to start thinking as a revolutionary, you know, to get our own minds back. We was talking about Willie Lynch, and he was saying that Willie Lynch basically took our minds from us. And he was saying now we need to get our minds back. So I was caught up between this and the fact of trying to act like a gangster, you know, like nobody is going to mess with me. Well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that to you. And I began to grow. I stabbed something like 6 or 7 different prisoners. 2 came to court, but they still refused to testify against me. And it got to the point that people was afraid to get in arguments with me because I was quiet, but I was dangerous because I just wouldn't accept anything that I felt was injustice. And I felt that the only power that you had in an environment like that is to show people that you're just not going to accept it. You're going to teach people how to treat you. And the only way you teach these type of people how to treat you is to let them know that you will lay them out if they come at you wrong. So I deliberately pursued that reputation. And close to the end of that bit, I began to metamorphosize more into a revolutionary. I started thinking about my people. I started thinking about the community and the type of detriment that people like myself was doing to the black community. I wanted to do something. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to do it in a very intelligent way. And I wanted to be an inspiration for the youngsters around me that felt the same way I felt. Like it's something that we can do to leave some type of legacy that will make more sense in what we are doing. So Meklenburg opened up about 3 years before I was released. Meklenburg was the first real control unit that the Virginia State Penitentiary ever had. They went to the Attorney General and they asked them to allow them to do whatever they had to do to us to break us down. They wanted to get the worst of the worst. People like myself that were stabbing other prisoners or whatever, and guys that were jumping on guys or whatever. They sent me a brother named Bo Billy, Thomas Penn, they used to call Top Cat, and 3 other prisoners. We was the first to open Meklenburg. And Gene Johnson, who was the head of the prison system now, was the warden at the time. And they had a system that was diabolical. I mean, it was, if we talked after 11 o'clock, they would bust gas in our cells. The food was such a small portion that you stayed hungry. The cells was always cold. And so we bucked, and they put us down in a hole, and they dogged us. And then eventually they started sending other people from the penitentiary to Meklenburg, and they filled it up. And it was a war at the time going on between me and another very popular prisoner that used to be on death row that had killed a guard in the state farm. And this war spread it out in Meklenburg. The people that was on my side and the people was on his side, and then it was a whole lot of stabbings and a lot of stupid stuff that was going on. And I came home. I went home in the midst of all of this nonsense. When I went home, my head was all messed up. You know, I don't even think I was human. I wasn't thinking human. All I was thinking was I hated drug dealers. I hated anything that I felt was poisoning the black community. And so when I went home, I had a daughter out there that was still young, and I wanted to be able to take care of her. I didn't want to work. My mind, I wasn't rehabilitated in any kind of way. My mind wasn't leaning towards developing myself into something worthwhile. My mind was going backwards. My humanity was being stifled from the hatred and anger that I had received in the penitentiary. And so I started robbing drug dealers. And I started robbing drug dealers all over Norfolk, all over Portsmouth. And my name started ringing all over the place. I got arrested 3 different times for robbing drug dealers. And each time they refused to come down and to identify me or whatever, because this is the type of thing where, okay, we're going to deal with this in the street. I was cool with that. I was caught with one of them, and the guy hit me 2 or 3 times in the back of my head with a pistol, and a whole lot of stuff happened. And I don't want to really go into the tits and the tats that was going on, but eventually I was arrested for a drug robbery. And the person that did the things that they said that I did do, far as shooting, having a gun, the drug dealer was paralyzed from the waist down, and it was 2 younger girls were with us. I was given 51 years, and I hadn't been home no more than 6 months. Now, leaving my daughter, leaving my friends, leaving the little family that I had, I was psychologically gone. I didn't understand, you know, I was cursing God, I was cursing everything in existence. It's like, what kind of life is this? What am I supposed to do now? And so when I came back in, my mind was strictly on George Jackson, what I had learned from George Jackson and Johnny Spain and that whole crew from the San Quentin prison. Fight back, resist. Your motto is resist, resist, resist. And all of the things that the God was doing to us, from the plantation type attitude, I said, what we're going to do now, we're going to gather together. We're going to organize. And we're going to fight back. And we're going to let the country know that there are some men in these penitentiaries. There are some men on these plantations, because I feel, and I know a lot of people say this, but I feel if I had been a slave, that I would have been with Nat Turner. I would have been with Gabriel Prosser. I would have been with Harriet Tubman. I would not have been a docile slave. I know this from the fire that's in me and the spirit that keeps me alive, that keeps me going. And it burns in me right now. And so, me organizing, they put me, when I came back, they put me in one hole after another because of my reputation. So they sent me back to Meklenburg. And James and Linwood Briley, which I'm sure most people from Richmond know about these brothers. These were very notorious brothers that was accused of killing over 12 people. They said it was way more than that, but they was charged and was tried for killing something like 12 people in the Richmond area. James and Linwood, I watched from the TV, and I watched them be tried, and then they went to the wall, because the wall was where they had death row. But the prison authorities were saying that Meklenburg was so secure that they could now bring James and Linwood and the rest of the people from death row to Meklenburg and make Meklenburg death row. So this is what they did. In the process, I got to know James real good. We became basically close friends. And we used to talk on the event, and he would send me letters. And the thing that blew me away is within 5 months, James had most of the prison guards up under his wing. In other words, he was getting money from them. They were scared of him. They was telling him about a lot of things security-wise that they shouldn't have told him, and he was telling me, and I really didn't believe it at first. And then James gave me the outline of the escape. And he had it in codes. And when I finally dissected it, and I read it, and he called me, and he said, Hashim, what you think? And I said, it's no way in the world that this is going to work. I said, there's too many things that can happen from the beginning that would shut y'all down. He said, well, this is all we got. He said, our life is on the line, and this is what we're going to do. We going with it. I said, okay, all right. And they pulled it off. And what was amazing about it is initially, if the guards had been vigilant, when they came off the yard and came in the cell block, all the guards had to do was do their job and made sure that they counted everybody. But they didn't do that. And and James and them knew this, that the guys never really did their job. So it was a brother named Goldie that supposedly went in with them, but he got on the side and snuck into the guy's bathroom and held the door. And when the guys, certain guys started coming to the bathroom, he held the door, and James was at the bars. He was saying, God said that the door is not working. You know, there's something wrong with it. They need to get somebody in there to fix it. This was the one thing I said was they would eventually find that. I felt like if, you know, the guys were doing their job, they would have seen that it was somebody missing, and they would have checked the bathroom to make sure why was it you couldn't get in the bathroom. And then when the nurse came around to go in the bathroom to get water like she routinely do, James was still saying the bathroom door is broke. So they went around the other side to get water. So this right here led into everything else. Everything else happened in stages, and anything could have went wrong. But it didn't. And they eventually walked off of death row with guard uniforms on, because they said it was a bomb that was found on death row, and all they did for the bomb was took a TV set and put a blanket on top of it, and they had knives at the throats of the lieutenants or whatever, and they took all of their uniforms off and put them on, and they walked out of the building through checkpoints with the TV set, the blanket, and the fire extinguishers where they were shooting to basically like to shield them from the guy that was up in the tower. And they got a truck, and the other guys that was coming, they was like, no, go back, because this bomb might blow up. And so they got to the truck. James and Linwood got in the front. Lim Tuggle, Goldie, and them got in the back. They drove to the front, went through the same routines that most all of the guys do. They got under the bottom, to check the bottom of the truck and everything, and the guard in the tower was looking at them. They told them to close the last section, and they drove out. They drove out. Now this is Meklenburg, the escape-proof penitentiary that the official was bragging about so much. And right after that happened, they took it out on us. They treated us worse than animals. You know, we couldn't shower, the food got worse, we couldn't clean ourselves up. You know, some of them were spitting in our food. It just got to the point that I took it upon myself to attack a god, me and a brother that they call Shaka Zulu. We attacked two gods in the block, and one of them ran, and then we tore up the block, tore the TV sets up, turned the tables over, and so they moved me and Shaka out of that building into building 1. And the rest of the brothers said that they would take care of the rest of it. A week later, 11 hostages was taken. And it was all over the news media, and they had state troopers and they had everybody out there. And when they came to try to find out who the leader was of the whole thing, Doc Holliday, Hoto, some of the most popular young revolutionaries in there, all of them told them, you talk to Hashin, go talk to Tommy Cox in building 1. We don't have that much to say. He is the one that's speaking for us. He will give you the demands and everything. I typed the demands out, they came over, they got the list of the demands, and they asked me, how did you get this kind of power? And I didn't even go into trying to explain that. After that, they gave up. After 3 days, all of us were shipped back to the state penitentiary down in this hole they used to call Animal House, the C building. They put me on what you call a strip cell, where you do not have a mattress for like 5 or 6 months, and you're sleeping on a steel bed. I stayed down there several times. They came down and they didn't feed me with the cot, and so it got so bad that I sent word out to some of the brothers on the yard, like, y'all need to talk to the warden or somebody, because it's done got out of hand down here. The day that James Briley was executed, which was April the 5th, 1985, 7 guards were stabbed, 2 of them viciously, and they almost died. I had sent a letter out, but I never sent a letter out and demanded or asked for guards to get stabbed or whatever. But this is like rumors, and this is like the legend of the penitentiary. Most people were saying that I was the one that got the guards stabbed. 2 weeks after this incident, they told me that they was going to ship me out of state. And I laughed, because I knew that Virginia supposed to have a reputation of there would never be anyone bad enough or hard enough that we would have to ship them out of state. We can take care of our own. But they never figured somebody would organize and unite some of the worst of people. And I understood when I read about Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun was a threat to Rome. But Attila the Hun went and got the criminals. Most of all of his warriors was the hardcore criminals of that day. If you get people that's criminals or whatever, and you give them a different mindset, and you give them something to fight for, then you got a real threat. And this is what I was doing with the brothers that was in there, trying to help them get a different mindset, to see that we didn't have to be low-life criminals, that we didn't have to be detrimental to our own people, to our own community, that we could fight for something that made sense, that we could do something noble with our lives, and that we could come out, even if we didn't come out, we could leave a legacy that could inspire people to stand up and just try to find your better self. And to me, this is what life is about: growing, rising, being something better. And I felt good. Anyway, they shipped me out of state on August the 21st, 1985, and I went to Santa Fe, state of New Mexico. In New Mexico, I found out that the violence that we was dealing with was baby stuff. These Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, everybody up there sticks together. You have to be with the race. You have to hang with your race. The Mexican mafia runs the place. I was up there for 3 years, and I realized then from talking to my daughter one night on the phone that the best thing for me to do was to now enhance my ability to think for myself, to go to school, to learn more about being human, to stand up for what is right, and just stay away from the Virginia prison system. And so after 3 years, they allowed me to put down 6 states, and they said, if you write the letter to the warden, and if the warden accepts you, then we will let you go. But we will never allow you back in the Virginia prison system again. And I wind up going to Connecticut, to the Connecticut prison system. And this was like sunshine for me. We had conjugal visits. You could work and get $500 a month for sewing caps. It was so much that was lenient and so much that was different. They allowed me to talk to college students. I started speaking. I was close to becoming an imam in Islam at the time. And then I just backed away because of several things in Islam that I felt was misogynistic and were just things that I just didn't like. And so I just walked away. But I started studying. I started reading so many books a week. And I went into Judaism, and I studied Christianity, and I studied animism, and I studied all about the different tribes. And then I made connections with Angela Davis, and she came to visit me. I made connection with Lenore Fulani that ran for president in New York. And I made connection with Ramona Africa, that was a head of the MOVE organization where they dropped a bomb and killed 11 members of her family. I made connection with Michelle McQueen, who used to work for the ABC News. And her name now is Michelle Martin. She's married to a lawyer, and she works now at NPR. I made connection with the people that are standing up, trying to make this country a better place to live in. And then I understood what my mission is and what I should be doing. And so from that backdrop, I began to work on a game that I developed called Destination. And Destination, I feel, is something that all of us go through in life before we die. We're always trying to get somewhere, whether it's positive or negative. Destination is a powerful game that I worked on for 2 years. It's a process of 2 players, and each player is trying to get to a certain place, but it's a war. It's a war going on. And it's sort of like chess in a way. I worked on the game Destination. I worked on writing a manuscript called Legacy of Evil that was dealing with, I didn't want to get too much in my life. It was dealing with all the things that happened from when I first came in prison and how I metamorphosized into who I am today. I prayed to God to help me, to enlighten me of what I'm on this earth for, why I've been so wild and why I didn't understand anything about life. And now I understand. I understand that I was so stubborn and wallowing in self-pity about my mother's death that I didn't understand. It took the trauma, it took the fire for me to walk through in order for me to be where I am. So the message that I began to give to the youngsters when I left Connecticut and came back to Virginia in 2001, I started a program called the Free Thinking Program. And the concept was that most of us live from some form of indoctrination. And this indoctrination is usually negative. For the youth now, it's negative hip-hop, it's peer pressure, it's gangsters, little gangster wannabes that's hanging around the high schools and the elementary schools. A lot of the youngsters are afraid to stand on their own, and they go into these gangs for protection, and they go into this hardcore stance that women, they use the B word, and they use all of the negative things that black people, most of us, are using now in a detrimental way. It's like we still have this self-hatred. And when Willie Lynch came up with how to control the Virginia slaves better so the other slaves would not have to continue to kill them and lynch them, saying this was product and you're messing up money. His thing was put the light skin against the dark skin, put the female against the male, put the old against the young, put the house slave against the field slave. And now we got an offshoot of that that's still going on right now. And so I fully understand that. And so my mission as a servant of God is to try to save our children, which is our future. And to save our children, we want to give them their minds back. Me, Jawanzi, the brother that I'm working with, the work that we are doing, the foundation of our work, is we are not preachers. We're not telling you, we're not trying to dictate to you what to think or what to do. We are only asking you to get your minds back, to think for yourself. Question your parents, question your teachers, question the people that's supposed to be your friends, and stand up. Get the confidence to believe in yourself. You don't need Jay-Z or nobody to keep coming out with words that you have to quote. You don't need Nas or nobody to tell you about history or nothing. All you have to do is go to the library and find these things out for yourself. You will feel good once you realize that you're not a follower, that you're not weak, and that you can stand up for the right things. Out of coming home, the free thinking classes was something that Warden Wright allowed me to do. And we used to give these classes on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights for an hour. I had youngsters coming, we was dealing with substance abuse, trying to keep them from joining the gangs, trying to keep them from cursing so much, talking about negative things, just rising and being better human beings. Eventually, the work that I did paid off, and I was given parole on May the 1st, 2007. I came home. Since I've been home, I've been following through with the promise that I gave to God, that I will serve you and I would try to save these children, to help save these children with everything that I got, to try to help them to not go through the stuff that I had to go through to get to this stage. You do not have to feel that pain. You do not have to be in there around so many losers to rise up and to do something worthwhile with the rest of your life. Now you have youngsters that's shooting it out with the police, that's shooting it out with each other, that's putting no value on their lives. It's like they don't even care. Come on. We can do better. We can do better than this. And so I'm out here now and I'm speaking, I'm mentoring the youth, and we're doing everything we can to try to come up with better ideas to save our children. So my ultimate message is save our children, save our future, and whoever is looking at this, please come to work with us in whichever way that you can. Peace.
I got a question for you. There's just a couple of things I'd like to touch on. One, I heard you speak on hip-hop music. I don't have a problem with hip-hop. I don't have a problem with what they say. But what I do have a problem with is the way that our children are taking the hip-hop in. They should know that it's nothing but entertainment. People don't actually live like that. And also, I would like for you to touch on, as far as the prison system, let the youngsters know out there who are aggressively selling narcotics or aggressively robbing or doing violent crime, what is their most likely future if they continue this same type of lifestyle? What do they really have to look forward for? I mean, by no means are we telling them what they should or should not do. But what we are telling them, that if you continue in this same lifestyle of behavior, what is your most definite outcome?
Okay, first, when I'm talking about hip hop and I'm talking about negative hip hop, we know that hip hop started off as a thing like house parties and a good feeling thing, and just talking about everyday life, you know, dancing, us as brothers and sisters, and just having fun. Hip hop became something different when it started to come out with negativity, with the B word, with you can kill another brother or kill anybody within the community and it makes you somebody like a hero. When I say this, I'm saying that when we go all the way back to the time that I was coming up, music influenced us, and music still influences the youngsters today. A lot of us can get around it, but a lot of us are not strong enough to not succumb to indoctrination. And indoctrination is just what Tupac Shakur did. Tupac Shakur was a powerful individual in the community, and a lot of young blacks are still looking up to the words that he used. And when he came with this N-I-G-G-A, and that is different, and we're going to take the power out of that word, I don't agree with that. And the only reason I say that, because I've looked at films and I read books, and every time that we was murdered or killed or hung, the N-word was used. Every time something happened to us, every time they killed us and said that we raped a white woman or whatever, the N-word was used. No other race of people, the Japanese, white people, Mexicans, all of them that have derogatory terms for them, none of them use those words and try to reform those words. You're not going to hear a Mexican say, spit or wetback is my boy. You're not going to hear a white person saying, you are my hunky. This just doesn't happen. Now, if some people want to do it, I can understand the youth or whatever is saying, well, it shouldn't be such a big deal about this word. But why are we so into this word? Why are we so into the B word for our women? All of this is coming from negative hip hop. And I feel that there should be a balance. I don't feel that you should say, condemn it and say they cannot do it, because they have a right to do it as America. They have a right, they have, from freedom of speech, they have a right to do it. But I don't feel that we have enough positive hip-hop music to take care of this. So I feel that the youngsters are getting a bad deal by listening to this music, and all of them, a lot of them, trying to live this music and becoming a plague to the black community. And that is killing each other, having older people afraid of them, doing things in the community that have allowed them to be terrorists. That's what they have become. Now, the second question, the 13th Amendment that was created to free us from slavery, it got a specific statement, and it's a lot of people that do not know this, and I want to explain this in details because a lot of people do not believe me when I tell them this until they go to the library or whatever and study it for themselves. The 13th Amendment says specifically, there will be no more slavery in the United States except, I quote, those duly convicted of a crime.
Come on now.
They are telling you specifically that you are a legal slave once you become a felon. And I'm talking to you youngsters right now so you will understand that in Texas, they follow that to the law. That means that they will force you to work in the fields and they will not pay you because they do not have to pay you. In the Virginia prison system, they do not have to pay you, but they're giving you $40 to $60 a month. The highest pay you get is $60 a month as working in the kitchen. You are a slave. You are crawling back on a plantation that we fought hundreds and hundreds of years to get off of. You are giving away the most important thing in your life, other than your heart beating. You are giving away your freedom. Without your freedom, you are closer to death than anything else on this planet. And you are doing it for what? To sell drugs on the corner for a couple of dollars? To go in some mom and pop store and rob them and know you might don't even get $500 out of there? You won't work a 9-to-5 job, but yet you will go to penitentiary and they're in there your age right now fighting each other to get a job to get paid $40 a month. Just think about how stupid that is. Just think about how you just giving your life away. Our lifespan, if you are healthy, is between 70 and 80 years. That still ain't no time. You are wasting time if you go into the penitentiary doing 15 or 20 years. And you come out as a felon, and I done went through this. Jawan's, the different brothers that I work with know exactly what I'm talking about. You come out as a felon, you think it's difficult getting a job now?
Come on, man.
You come out as a felon, it's almost impossible getting a job. Every one of these jobs now are asking for a criminal background check. And they say, I'm sorry, but I got other people that don't have a criminal background, I'm gonna give them the job first. So you come out, right now you still can't vote, you can't get a job. A lot of times your family done turned against you. You are bitter, you are angry. They just had a guy in the papers today in California. His name is, I can't think of his name right now, but he was no more than 26 years old. He killed 4 policemen within 2 days. The guy is a parolee. He was scared that they was coming to get him to violate him for parole. They talked to his family. It's in the day's paper. The guy did 7 years. He tried to work and find jobs. The first 7 or 8 months he was out and couldn't find any jobs, and he was frustrated. They stopped him at a stoplight, and he thought they was coming to get him to take him back, and he shot at him, and he critically wounded 2. And they came at him at a house, and he had a shootout, and he killed 2, and those 2 died. And they said this is the first time in the history of California that many policemen was killed at one time. This one man that was scared, that afraid of going back in the penitentiary. So just think about how serious this is.
I just want to touch on one subject. Oftentimes, and I feel the youngsters, because a lot of time we tell them how counterproductive it is to sell drugs. And we know that when we sell drugs, we devalue the neighborhood, the homes in our neighborhood. We scare a lot of our elderly people who have worked so hard to pay for their homes. But what I wanted to touch on is a lot of guys say, well, I don't have a job, I need to feed my family. Just let them know how counterproductive they are to their family. I mean, you may go out here and have a 5-year run, and you might stack hundreds of, let's say, and for that 0.1%, you might stack hundreds of thousands of dollars. But for the time frame, like you spoke about your situation with your daughter, how detrimental was it to your relationship with your kids during that stretch of 26 years? Just let the guys know how much strain you have put on your family your daughters from that 26-year stretch from the decisions you made?
Right. Okay. You're right. It to me is one of the, you stifle your ability to have a good relationship with your family, your daughters, your brothers, your wife, when you go out and decide to become a criminal. One thing that we had back in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, we had community. Community was the greatest thing that we ever had. We had a place that they call in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they call the Black Wall Street. There was blacks that was doctors and had money, and they would share this money with others to make sure that they could pay rent and they had food. This spread it out all over the country where we looked out for each other. Even when I was coming up, neighbors knew each other. We used to sit on the porch and laugh and joke. Other mothers would make sure that the other mother's sons was taken care of. Ain't that Pearl's boy there? Boy, what are you doing around here? It was everybody knew each other, and we was like a family, and we looked out for each other financially or whatever. If something happened to that mentality when drugs hit the community. Now, drugs was in the community in the 60s, but it was spread it out, and it was only a few people. You knew who the junkies was or whatever. They would come from New York and come back down in Norfolk, and you would see a few of them. But it was nothing like it is today. We had a mentality